Hello everyone, this is Ponder on Weather. In this update, we're going to be talking about some nasty storms over the next several days that'll bring flooding rains and some very large hail, as well as take a sneak peek at the long range. So if you do like weather-related content, please subscribe to my channel as I will upload daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. Let's get right to it. Good morning, everyone. This is your June 9th update. I appreciate everyone out there that answered the question yesterday. What was your favorite season? Today, I would like to know how much rainfall you've actually received in just one day. Mine has actually been 14 inches. So let me know what that answer is. I'd love to hear from you out there and leave your comments below. So let's get right to it. Here's your overall hazard outlook for today. Down here in the desert Southwest, we've got excessive heat warnings out here where it's going to be dangerously hot in much of South California and southern Arizona here. We actually have red flag warnings as well, and that's going to be pretty windy out here in Nevada as well as Utah. And we got high wind warnings and portions of Wyoming and southern Montana. And then the heat starts to build in Texas with heat advisories out there, where the heat index is going to be approaching 108 degrees today in parts of West Texas. And then out here, we got flash flood watches and warnings. You're going to be dealing with some very heavy rain, excessive heavy rain into portions of Arkansas, Mississippi as well. And then we got a little bit of spot of heat advisories up here along the northeast coastline. So let me take you through what happened yesterday, because we had some nasty storms yesterday. We talked about the big storms that were brewing. And man, the couple features kind of highlight out down here in Montana. Man, look at that 4-inch hailstone. I mean, softball size hail is 3.8. So that is some dangerous stuff. I had a couple comments out there that said, hey, that's the biggest hail I've actually seen in my life, and I'm 50 years old. So that was some serious stuff. And there's been pockets of, tennis ball and baseball size hail yesterday in much of Montana as well as North Dakota. And also the flood concern was a huge risk yesterday. Just yesterday alone, this is the 24-hour map of rainfall. And you can notice up here in the Dakotas, these reds are anywhere from 3 to 6 inches. But if you zoom in here, there is like a blue, some isolated blue areas. That is 8 inches plus just in one day that they've received. And down here into portions of southeastern Arkansas, they picked up over a foot. And places like Damas, Arkansas, they received 13 inches of rain. There's some of the locals say, hey, it was the most rain they've seen in 35 years and in one day. So that was some dangerous flooding, and they had a high risk for flooding yesterday with numerous flash flood emergencies. But look along the coast here, all up along the Ohio Valley, this is just one day of pockets of green and oranges and yellows. So yeah, and yesterday, climatologically speaking, is the wettest day of all the years. So if you take the 30-year average normals, June 8th is historically the wettest day in the United States. And so, man, that came to fruition yesterday, but it continues wet. I mean, even today, we've got another high risk for excessive rainfall. That is a rare feat. I mean, you guys, when you see high risk for severe weather, that's a rare feat. So it's rare to see, like, especially back-to-back days for high risk excessive heat that's happening. We're talking 8 to 12 inches right in the zone for excessive rainfall in portions of Arkansas, northern portions of Mississippi. So that area is going to be under the gun, and even a moderate risk in portions of Arkansas to extending into Tennessee, the Tennessee Valley, but a good swath of a slight risk for excessive rainfall. That's a lot of rain that's going to be happening today in much of Tennessee, much of Kentucky, and that'll extend up into the Ohio Valley. So definitely be on the lookout for that, because flash flooding is the second worst weather phenomenon, weather-related death phenomenons out there next to heat. So we have a combination of heat and flooding today, which is a dangerous going, today. So let's take a look at the overall severe outlook. Not nearly as bad as it was yesterday. There are going to be little pockets of some severe weather into Great Falls, Montana, where they do have a slight risk for some of those storms that could be getting a little bumpy later on this afternoon, as well as the dry line where it just really heats up out here in West Texas. They could see a little bit stronger thunderstorms out there into the Midland and Odessa area. But tomorrow we'll still have that flood risk. I mean, that's that pesky upper level low that brought all the rain to Texas, that brought all the rain to Kansas and Oklahoma and Arkansas. That we're still dealing with it. It continues to shift and slowly meander into shifting a little bit further off into the east. So now by Thursday, that pocket of slight risk of excessive rainfall is going to be over northern portions of Mississippi and Alabama, going over the heart of more or less central and eastern Tennessee by then, going into Kentucky, going into West Virginia as well as Virginia, with some of those higher rain amounts that will extend into the Carolinas as you go through the day on a Thursday. But yeah, Thursday is going to be your nasty day for severe weather. So, I mean, there's a big swath already that has that hatched risk. And I showed you what the hatched risk does. That could bring that tennis ball, the baseball, some isolated pockets of the softball type size hail not out of the question. So typically when you get a hatched risk, you have a 10% probability or greater. But in this case, it's a 30%. So this is a huge swath of real estate that could pick up that, 2-inch plus diameter hailstones or greater. That's the atmosphere has the potential to drop into Rapid City, into Bismarck, going into Dickinson, Williston again, North Dakota. So all these areas will be under the gun. And to Spearfish, South Dakota, Rapid Valley, South Dakota. So all those areas will be under the gun for that larger hail. But as you get into the Minot areas and Sioux City, you still can get, some of that larger hail, but not nearly as intense. You're probably talking your quarter size, your $50 type size hail, still could do some damage to your vehicle. So if you live up in this area, you definitely have to be under the gun and look out for some dangerous weather that'll be highlighted over your area for the day on Thursday, as well as tornadoes. I mean, not only are you going to be dealing with those higher winds, yesterday some of these severe thunderstorm watches were up to 80-mile-per-hour winds and up to 3-inch plus hailstones. So that's this type of stuff we're going to be dealing with on a Thursday, as well as tornadoes into Rapid City, Bismarck, and as well as Dickinson and Williston. So all those areas that could be under the gun for that hatched risk, those bigger hailstones, could also see some isolated pockets of a tornado as well. So a dangerous day ahead for sure, and definitely have your weather radios handy to get to all the alerts. But as we go into Friday, that finally the pesky upper level low that we've been dealing with for about a week and a half will be finally shifting off of the East Coast, and that'll be over up to North Carolina and to Virginia by then, with those heavier rains. Not the high risk type stuff, but still you could pick up a good 1 to 3 inch isolated amounts of 4 inches is not out of the question on the day on Friday, as this will finally shift off the East Coast, and we could say bye-bye from that upper level low that we've been dealing with for like a week and a half. But the main reason they've been dealing with this, and let's take a look at the Southern Oscillation Index. And so, the Southern Oscillation Index kind of gives you an idea of what's happened for the South with that southern jet stream getting active. And it's been a noticeable trend since March that it's been really elevating from that La Nina to an end zone neutral. And we've had a steady climb. We've had some serious drops in the last several days of some minus 20s in the SOI index. That is indicative of that active jet just continues to stay alive. And you can see the noticeable jump from May 26th, and that was one of the culprits where we've had such an extreme rain amount with the combination of entering, climatologically the wettest time of the year. So it was definitely not a good combination with that steady climb in the SOI index, as well as going into the wettest time of the year. That's the combination that they produced all that excessive rainfall into Texas and much of Louisiana, and now extending into the Ohio Valley as well. And you can see what's happening to the temperatures down here in the Eastern Pacific along the coast. I mean, it's really elevated. And that's one of the reasons why we're seeing some of those extreme heat in portions of the Southwest, getting into West Texas, where they're taking advantage of those warmer waters down here. But it's also tapping into that energy. And now going forward, the National Hurricane Center has a 40% chance of some sort of tropical development on the central, eastern Pacific side. And you can see all the waters down here in the Bay of Campeche and as well as the Caribbean, well above average. Notice the waters along the coast into Texas, it's predominantly a little cooler because you've been cooler in Texas with all the rainfall and everything. But now we're going to be warming up in Texas. And so, as we warm up, some of these waters into along the coast will gradually start to warm up as well throughout this week and going into next week, while we're watching this system down here in the central eastern Pacific here. A lot of indications has this possibly crossing over into the southern Gulf, into the Bay of Campeche sometime next week, and that's what we'll be looking at going forward. So let me show some of you the setup as we expand the view as we extend into Saturday. So as we take a look at Saturday on the 500 millibar, this is the upper levels, and what's happening at the upper levels should kind of give you an idea of what's happening at the surface. You can see this trough hanging out here off the Pacific Northwest. That'll send in impulses of cooler air into Washington and to Oregon, as well as some much needed rain showers. And that's why they're getting that clash into the upper regions into Washington and Montana with some cooler air as the ridge builds in the interior sections of much of the Four Corners regions, much of the central US. And this will be slowly building back into Texas, into West Texas. And then along the coastline here on the northeast, we do have a trough up in the northeast. That's going to bring that cooler air down into the northeast, while you're still dealing with that upper level low that will be shifting off the east coast by then. But as we go into Tuesday, this trough backs up a little bit, and so that'll help you warm up even further along the coastline. That'll help transition and deepen this ridge into the interior regions where they're getting all the severe threat. By next Tuesday, they'll be highly dominated over that ridge again, with some very hot temperatures coming back in that part of the country. You can see the trough really start to dig in even further up here in the northeast. Okay, and it's not really dominating over Texas. So at the same time, this system's trying to come up from the eastern Pacific and cross over into the Bay of Campeche, as this ridge will back up, and that'll allow this system to come up into the Gulf. And so by the time we go into Thursday, this is late next week, this is next Thursday, we're talking June 17th, we'll be watching for this feature as this ridge will back up. This will allow this feature to come back into the Gulf of Mexico, as it's going to be trapped with this ridge up in here in the northeast. Here's this dominating ridge, and we'll have a dominating ridge here. And this just makes a forecasting nightmare when it's trapped between two ridges like this on where, if, or what this might come out of this deal. But what we're going to be looking at going forward for much of Texas is the combination, because you've seen a lot of rainfall in Texas, a lot of rainfall along the coastline of Louisiana. And at the same time, we're looking for this development possibly in the southern Gulf of Mexico. But as we go into the 20th, because this will take its sweet time to possibly develop and meander, and the longer obviously sits over that warmer waters that I showed you down here in the Bay of Campeche, the more probability it has it gets, as it gets its act together, as it continues to remain trapped between two ridges of high pressure. And that's where the forecasting nightmare comes into play. It's like, does it move inland? Does it move inland and still get trapped, and all that rain will be raining over Texas? Or does it stay offshore in much of the Gulf and and then just keep meandering, sending spokes of energy? You got to understand, this would be a low pressure system that's possibly going to go into the Gulf, Bay of Campeche, late next week. And then if it goes into the interior regions, remember Tropical Storm Bill back in 2015, we had the wettest May on record for much of Texas. And what happened with that feature, it went inland. So when it went inland, it had what they call a brown ocean effect because the ground was completely saturated. And as it went inland, it took advantage of that warmer temperatures that came out ahead of it. They're going to be dealing with in Texas before that. So the ground is going to be warm. And if it possibly moves inland, that brown ocean effect will come back into play, and it'll almost act like like it's still over land, and it could still remain fairly strong as it goes over land, and even in Texas or even in Louisiana. So the point of it is, along the coastline, that as we get into the middle of next week, and especially by next weekend, this will probably be a big headline as this kind of just meanders it over the southern Gulf, and then these areas will has seen a lot of rainfall. So this would be kind of devastating for this low pressure system to just kind of hang out, sending spokes of energy and precipitation just along the coastline. So if you live from Brownsville to probably the panhandle of Florida, you definitely have to be looking out for this feature, especially as we go into late next week into next weekend. So hey, I appreciate watching this video. Definitely leave your comments below and let me know how much rain you received in just a 1 day period in a 24-hour time frame. Like I said, mine is 14 inches, so I'd love to hear about yours. I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.